again, after a long absence, for which I must apologize, I have returned. This is your host, RHJunior, Ralph Hayes Jr., Reality Check, coming to you live, barely live, on the internet, for spleen squeezings. How do you like my logo? Yay! Uh, I need to get some bumper music, bumper music to open up this thing, get this thing going. Let's see here. And let's see. I'm gonna. Whoops. Okay. Okay, we're live. We're live. And I'm going to Facebook this. Oh my gosh, got to Facebook this. That was supposed to sound like a airheaded teeny bopper, and it came out sounding like Julia Childs. Okay. Yeah. Time to tweet this sucker. Tweet, tweet, baby. All right, if you're out there, according to this, I've got 2 people watching. Whoa, hey, yeah, that was quick. How y'all doing? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is this thing working? I don't know. It is currently raining. I'm sure you're thrilled with that. If you're I swear, Daniel Meyer, fellow Christians, have him in your prayers, because that man is just getting, fate is, fate and circumstances are just kicking him in the teeth. He hailstorms. If you've seen the news, Texas is getting ripped, structurally superfluous new behind by the weather. Hailstorms, tornadoes, just it's like, I mean, like, what did somebody do to make God that mad at them? I don't know, because they're just getting ripped, and he has suffered auto damage. He has suffered damage to his house, and he's rebuilding a 100-year-old Victorian house. So that's not it's his and his wife's pride and joy in their obsession, and to have their brand new, they just got their roof put up, and it got ripped up by a hailstorm, and they got their car damaged by, and they got their little storefront business. All the windows got blasted out by this hailstorm, and they've been having vehicle problems. They've been having house problems. They've been having health problems. Uh, both of them, and on top of this, this is a recent tragedy. One of the relatives just committed suicide, and it is a terrible thing. And I cannot even begin to imagine the weight on their shoulders right now. And I'm asking y'all to have have their names up before the throne of God, because I'm praying for them, but old reprobate like me isn't gonna get God's attention too much. Somebody uh, with better faith than mine would have God's ear. Anyway, uh, we need some background sounds here. Rainy Tin Shack here. Okay. Ironically, rain. Okay, I do this because got nothing else. Everybody trying to copyright everything. I've considered using like some 1920s music, but you never know where somebody or some bastard corporation is going to use a loophole. Oh no, we've copyrighted that. We've trademarked that. We used it in uh, just evil. Because these people they how they get these things copyrighted. What they do is they will take a product, a franchise, or music or music, video, a book, uh, trademark character, whatever. They will go out, and they will deliberately do this in order to keep it from lapsing into either back to the original owner or back into the public domain. Every few years, they will produce some piece of crap based on the franchise, and then stick it on a shelf to gather them out. That's the real reason you get all these direct-to-video movies and stuff, is so that they can keep control of the intellectual property. You know, I've said before, even the baseline of our copyright laws are bullcrap. Look, I can even see a creator, the law saying that a creator owns it for the life of the creator, right? I can see that. But they've got it where it's like 50 years plus life. And I'm like, uh, you know, isn't it interesting how we throw our cultural heritage into prison for longer than we throw our axe murderers? That's tragic. What is it? 50 plus life. As it currently stands now, the only music that is in the public domain, the last stuff that is in the public domain is either the obscure stuff that artists are putting out as Creative Commons, or stuff that was written, that was last on the radio in the 1920s. It's almost 100 years. You have to wait almost 100 years before you can use something in public domain, and that goes for everything. It goes for trademarks. It goes for patents. It goes for. But things that need to be locked up like that for 100 years or more, I mean, we're talking things like, you know, are not protected that well. Uh, Medicines, for instance. Uh, People talk about big pharmacy. What they don't realize is that these companies that make these medicines, the companies that make these medicines, they are laying it all on the line. They have to do all they have to do all the groundwork themselves. They have to do all the testing in the lab themselves. They have to do all the uh, all the lab work, all the testing, all the everything themselves, all the production themselves, and then they have to take it. Thanks to our terrible uh, government system, they have to take it to a government office for approval and wait. Sometimes 10, 20 years. These people in the Food and Drug Administration will stick their thumb up their own butts and rotate while they think it over. And the thing of it is, the patent on the medicine doesn't start when it's approved by the FDA. No, The patent rights on a medicine start the day they first produce it in the lab. So all this time they're waiting, the clock is ticking. This is why medicine is so expensive. Because they have to recoup their losses. All the money they spent on research, all the money they spent on, all the money they spent on research, all the money they'll spend on production and advertising, all the money they'll spend on testing. And all the money they could have been making while they're waiting for the government to do its usual terrible job and finally approve their medicine. And, so this is why the price of medicine is so high. I once saw a TV program, 60 Minutes or something, one of those news programs, where they tried to do a little gotcha thing with some executive from a pharmaceutical company. They pointed out, this medicine for a human being costs $50 a pill, or something like that. $10, $20 a pill. But this same medicine over here only costs 50 cents a pill for a pig. And I'm like, yeah, aren't you clever? That's like saying, that's like saying, this hamburger over here costs so much, but this dog food over here doesn't cost nearly as. It's the same stuff. No, it isn't. The federal standards and safety and all the other requirements are a little bit higher for the stuff meant for humans than the stuff that's meant to go into livestock. That's why the medicine for the pigs is so cheap. Because the company that makes it doesn't have to jump through as many hoops. No common sense. Now, I don't know if anybody's there. It says here that I've got 2 people watching. I don't see nobody talking. I don't know what to say. Look, let's see here. What else? I did have a train of thought. I sort of fell off it. Got run over by it. Now, speaking of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, you will never hear people freak out more than if you suggest that maybe we don't need the government to do that. This is the big difference between conservatives and liberals. Well, one of them, okay, is a very important difference in thinking. Is that when a conservative says we don't want the government to do this, the liberal thinks that we don't want it to be done at all. Category error. We want these things to be done. In fact, we know these things will be done in the private sector if the private sector is allowed to do them. You tell a liberal that you don't want the government to sell shoes, the liberal will turn around, And they'll sincerely think you want little old ladies and orphans and widows to go barefoot. That's how they think. They think that if the government doesn't do it, then it doesn't get done. The government has always been mommy, daddy, and their own personal Jesus. And they cannot conceive of a world where uh, things get done without the almighty state. Even though they come from a world where things got done all the time without the intervention of the state. Uh, up until 1918, up until I forget when it was. Was it 1916 or 1918? It was back in the teens, the beginning of the 20th century. Up until 1918, we had no income tax in this country. No income tax. The government got by on various other taxes, tariffs, uh, and also sales taxes, various other things. Local government got by on sales taxes and other things like that. But there was no income tax. In fact, the government got by on less than a third of the revenue that it horks up today. And yet, we had hospitals, we had police, we had roads with traffic lights and traffic signs. Somehow, we had schools and libraries. We had all those things that they talk about without the government snorkeling up a third of everyone's income every year. But if you try and tell somebody we don't need the income tax, they will they'll shit themselves in horror and start screaming about how you want to starve widows and orphans. Their programs of tax and spend do not only create recessions and depressions, they protract them, they extend them. They spend all their time praising Franklin Delano Roosevelt for the New Deal program and all the wonderful social programs he got, and how he solved. He did not solve the Great Depression. The Great Depression did not really end until after World War II, when the government started unthrottling people. His programs actually prolonged the Great Depression. You know why? Because he was sucking up revenue out of the public domain and using it for programs to hire people up to go out and build roads to nowhere. Literally, that's what they do. They have these youth employment programs where the young men would sign up to go out and work for the government, and they put them to work doing things like making roads that led nowhere, and doing all this. And the private sector, sat on its duff. First of all, because the government sucked all the money out of their pockets, and second of all, because the government was doing what they would have done. I mean, you owned a company that lay out asphalt. Where was your incentive to go out and do business when the government, first of all, took all your profits, and second of all, gave your work to a bunch of 20 somethings and teenagers to make roads to nowhere. All the thousands of government institutions that popped up thanks to Franklin Delano. He was a socialist. He led our country to victory in World War II, technically, but he was a fool when it came to economics and government policy. Now, getting off track again, trying to remember where I was going with this. I'll make that. Now, I'm having trouble thinking. See what I'm up to here. So I'm chewing in your ear. Well, I was thinking this earlier. Let's talk pop culture. Okay, I have been off the radar for way too long. Something like 2 weeks now. This is my first show, quote unquote, in 2 weeks plus. There are a lot of little reasons for that, and a lot of excuses I can make. Because really, I was just, it just happened. Okay, I apologize for that. I'm sorry about that. Had some health issues, but those are fairly minor. Had some running around, got to do stuff issues, and it's just. But I was also suffering just a real, I mean, not just a creative block. I'd been suffering a creative log jam. You know what I'm saying? Could not get anything. I've been picking and picking and picking and picking at the next couple of pages for the probability bomb. And it just wouldn't, just now. I remember seeing a cartoon by Burke Breed, the guy that does Bloom County, with Opus the Penguin. It was a poster. It showed, it was supposed to be a photograph taken by Opus's friends. And they sneak in there and they take a photograph of him sitting on the John, sitting on the toilet, uh, reading a newspaper. He looks, and the caption read, "Our editor in a rare creative moment." And I have to say, and it occurred to me a couple of days ago, that is a very good metaphor for the creative process. Okay, it's really depressingly accurate. Okay, if you're a creative person, you want to, you know, no matter how regularly you produce on no matter how regularly you produce, no matter how badly you may want something to come out, If it isn't time, if it, it's, when you make some, it's going to count when it comes out, and you're not gonna be able to rush it. And sometimes, that creative impulse is very urgent. When you gotta go, you gotta go. When you gotta be creative, you gotta be creative. And you can't, you are in a desperate hurry to make to get to the workspace and have your creative moment. And other times, ain't nothing gonna happen. And you can sit there and struggle and strain, and it is just not gonna happen. That's now that we've stretched that, what? Now that I've pushed that metaphor just as far as it can, it just really is. When you make your living as a creative individual, when your creativity does a you're not suffering from when they call it a artistic block. uh don't think, the image is not of a wall in your path. We're talking more of a blockage in your colon, because nothing's coming out and you are panicking. This is one of just moving on from that metaphor. Uh, when you're a person, it's one of the big problems with dealing with a creative uh, system. There are some things that you can do to try and make your productivity a more regular thing, but at the end of the day, uh, you can't force creativity. You can't force. Everybody thinks this. Oh, you can't rush genius. No, it's true. And believe me, every artist on the planet has tried. I mean, there were. I guarantee you, there were days when Michelangelo was chipping away that big marble block trying to make Michelangelo's David. And he's going, "Take shape, you miserable piece of rock." You know, and going, "Why won't it work?" And the problem is that the people that make the money and hand the money over to the artist, they want regular productivity. And creativity, especially if you want a really good product, is not something that happens regularly. We can crank out crap, and here we are back at that metaphor again. We can crack out substandard garbage all day long. I mean, truly awful stuff. just all day long. I'm not lying. And this is why so much of what we see in the public domain, in music, in television, and movies, is such dreck because the money moguls aren't willing to wait for really great art. They see creative people as as the farmer that saw the goose that laid the golden egg, as something that would produce, even before the guy got greedy and killed the goose. The goose was just, a thing that was supposed to, like, he thought it was something, cracked out a golden egg every morning, regular as clockwork. Yeah, I'm not trying to whine. Oh, they expect too much of me. No, I'm just saying it's distressing when you're a creative person and you just can't seem to make the creativity happen. You're like the poor guy squatting on the thunder bucket, who can't get anything to move. And the fact that you have to do this, or starve and die and freeze when they shut the electricity off, doesn't make it any easier. That just ups the stress. We may not sweat like a guy who pushes a plow or turns a lug wrench, but trust me, we sweat. We sweat a lot. And man, I cannot begin to describe to you the frustrations I've been going through lately. Because okay, this here, what I'm working on right now, this is the third remake, second or third remake I've made of the next page, because I wasn't quite, it just wasn't happening. You know, just wasn't happening. It didn't seem right, and I had to go back over and back and this is really it's really not excellent work. Look at this. This is if Marvel Comics isn't going to be publishing this, let's face it, folks, ever. It gets the job done, but it's really not, up there with the greats or even with the mediocres. Speaking of electric bills, okay, please, please, if you can spare a buck, if you can just a couple of just a couple of bucks, toss a penny in the hat, cause my electric bill is due in about a week, and they want several $100s. I've still not gotten any answer back from the people in Heap. Rather have they sent it back and said I've got to send them more information, and I've got to go round robin with them again, and I managed to get the internet bill paid just literally in the nick of time for this month. But if the electric bill goes, if the electricity goes off, well, that's it. I die. Can't heat, can't cool, can't cook, can't keep my food refrigerated, can't go online and earn any, do artwork for money. Uh, you know, so a donation towards the electric bill would be greatly appreciated. Yay! Electricity is one of the most troublesome necessities in modern life. You can't store it. You can't save it up for later. You can't, and you can't uh, run down to the shop and buy more of it. It's an instantaneous product. The instant it stops coming, it's gone. It's gone. you know, and you're up Doo Doo Creek. And it's one of the most precarious things about our modern civilization that I mean, if the water shuts off, if the water shuts off, you can go out with a bucket. You know, uh, if gas shuts off, you can find workarounds. You can cook with you can heat and cook with fire. But uh, let's be honest, electricity stopped being a luxury the day people could start dying when it got shut off. You get what I'm saying here. We live in an age where people's lives depend on the electricity being on and being on continually. A power outage in a neighborhood with a hospital or with a large number of elderly is, a death sentence. Think about that. Not just from life support machines or things like that, but just to keep the heating or the cooling going. A few years back they had a heat wave in France, and dozens of elderly people died because they had a power outage too, and it was in the middle of a heat wave, and they died of heat stroke. I remember one time we had a huge storm that came through in this area, windstorm, about a year or so ago. Early start of start of summer, and it took out the power line. I mean, trees, boom, 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 took down the lines in several places. There was no power from here in Marietta. There was no power in Marietta. There was no power in. Oh yeah, I mean, I drove for half an hour before I saw a place that had electricity. Are you getting the picture? I mean, and that power was out for over 2 days, for something like 2 days in some places, and it was terrible. Uh, Millions and millions and millions of dollars in business lost. Millions of dollars in food went bad in the stores. I mean, it was you couldn't buy anything or sell anything because everybody uses credit cards and debit cards, and no electricity. They couldn't pump gas. The pumps ran on electricity. Couldn't uh, you know it was just a disaster, a complete disaster. And almost nobody has a backup system. I mean, there are a handful of people around here that have like a little gas powered generator. How long do those things run? 4, 8 hours? You need something that will run for days. This is why one of the things I think that should be included in every mobile home design is a gas-powered generator. I mean, not gasoline gas, though that would be good too. I'm talking a uh, propane or natural gas generator. Most areas they have propane or gas lines. You hook that generator up to the gas lines, and when the power goes out, when the electric, you know, when the power from the electric company goes out, you can turn on the gas to your little propane generator and keep going indefinitely because the gas lines will still be going even when the electricity's out. Oh, have redundancy. And that sounds like an extravagant. To most people, that sounds like an extravagance. You really want us to put something like that in a mobile home? Uh, Considering how many people's lives depend, how much people's lives depend on steady electricity these days. Yes. There should, backup batteries that can last for days should be a standard. Backup generators in buildings uh, should be standard. Uh, they should have been for generations, but the majority of our society is not designed. We're designed, around a at the last minute mentality. What I mean by that is that every business they have maybe a day, their companies have only a day's worth of product to sell. And they literally get it delivered just in time every couple of days, just in time. And what happens if that just in time stops? Everything comes crashing down. Vast portions of our infrastructure are a juggling act. And nobody wants to fix it. Nobody wants to fix it. I would not expect, I would not want the government to take this job on because the government's a bunch of idiots. But the government ought to be doing, putting out incentives, tax incentives, uh, reductions of paperwork for doing certain necessary infrastructures. Uh, they should be. The government's job is to clear the way for the free market, not prevent the free market from happening. Quite seriously. Uh, I can hear some people, oh, you want to cut all these electric company fat cats, all these, but yes, when Granny's respirator depends on the electric company being up and running at all times, I'm going to be kind of motivated to cut the electric company all kinds of frickin' slack. Good night. These people ain't shipping champagne to your door. They should deregulate. They should strip out 90% of the regulatory restrictions they have on things like power companies and businesses in general. The government's not making anything better. The government has gotten more and more involved. And what have we got? We have got an electric grid that is literally 50 years out of date. It is limping along on its last legs, and our needs for power are growing daily. But the government, the federalist left-leaning liberal attitude is that, until morale approves, the beatings shall be redoubled. They want cheap, clean energy, and they can't seem to get it through their heads. Here's the big clue, leftists. Here's the important point you're missing. Clean energy costs money. And no, getting the government to hand out money isn't helping. You keep taking money away from the very people who have the best motivation to invest their money in building better infrastructure. And you keep giving it to people who have no more investment in what they're doing than in making sure that they make it to the next election. That's insanity. And the only thing worse than a government elected official is an unelected government official. It stinks that an elected government official is only interested in getting away with what he's doing until he's out of office and can't be held accountable. But a bureaucrat is never accountable. You can't fire me. I work for the government. And you can't. That's the thing about creating a bureaucracy. A bureaucracy, after a certain point, a bureaucracy starts existing to the main motivation of a bureaucracy is to sustain its own existence. It's like any other organism. It's interested in its own survival. And the way bureaucracies are run, the bureaucracy's survival is completely divorced from how well it does its job. Expecting a government agency to do a better job than the free market at spending your money, that's a fool's paradise. I'm sort of wobbling all over the place topic wise here. For those who don't know, like I was saying earlier, I haven't been able to get much of anything done artist wise. I managed the one thing I managed is to add a couple of chapters to the Great Alicorn Hunt. You just pecked that out. Finally had a creative surge in that particular format, but and hasn't that generated a lot of fun? You know, I always knew that, biblically speaking, that the world was eventually going to decline, and corruption and evil were going to grow, and at some, till till Gabriel blew his horn, that that there were going to come, days of darkness, and that event, that I always knew that society was always going to grow, that the world was always going to grow more corrupt and more fallen. It's a fallen world. I knew that it was going to decay, that it was going to become more uh, fallen as time went by. That it was going to become more corrupt and sinful. But never in my wildest dreams did I ever expect that the world was going to become batshit insane. You expect decadence, depravity, and evil. You don't expect pants on your head crazy. We're talking poo flinging bonkers here. I could have never seen that, and I don't think there are too many theologians who when they talked about the world gone mad. This wasn't what they meant. They didn't actually mean pants on the head crazy. They were speaking metaphorically, not literally. But holy crap, what the heck happened? Only this asshole generation could come to the conclusion that the best treatment for a crazy person, for a crazy man who thought that he was a woman, was to chop off his wiener. Only this asshole generation could come to the conclusion that healing the lame, the halt, the sick, and the blind could be construed as a hate crime. Only this asshole generation would accept on face value a white woman saying that she was black and demand that the rest of us agree with her. Only this asshole generation would look at the suicide rates among transgenders, among the LGBT communities, all 2% of the population that they represent. Only this asshole generation would look at a bunch of sexual deviants and mentally ill people who have formed a community in our society. They could look at how that they are not persecuted. They are in fact they are not even tolerated. They are accepted, embraced, and their lifestyles are even promoted by our media, by our mainstream entertainment, and by our government. Only our asshole generation could look at all these facts, see that these people are still breaking records for rates of suicide, and conclude that their suicidal depression is because how mean society is being to them. Only this asshole generation could come to that conclusion. We have an entire society. We have Hollywood starlets standing up in front of the Academy Awards talking about what wonderful people all their gay and tranny friends are. We have people holding parades for these idiots. And they're still suicidally depressed. In spite of the fact that we have an entire society supporting, praising, and telling them what wonderful people they are. And this asshole generation looks at that and says that, oh, they're suicidal because the cis white gender scum are picking on them. I had one of these tossers in the comments section on my fan fiction stories. And he was pulling this line. The reason their suicide rate is so high is because they're so oppressed and persecuted. Oh, shut up. You want to talk about oppression? Go talk to a Jew in 1940s Germany, asshole. Go talk to a black man in the Deep South during the 60s. Or better yet, before the Civil War. Go talk to a Christian during the time of the Roman Empire. You want to talk about oppression? You're not being oppressed, you tosspots. You're being contradicted. You're being told what you don't want to hear. You're being told that, oh, no, that's not normal. It's not healthy. In fact, it's mentally ill. and you need help. Oh, I just can't stand it, and they fling themselves out in front of moving traffic. Right. What brought this on? I'll tell you is because there are people that I've talked about this before. This whole you know victim identity culture has spread everywhere. It's reached the point in real life where there are deaf people who refuse to let their children get cochlear implants because that would deny them their place in the deaf culture. And there are people out there. I mean, it's crazy. There was one guy in the comments who was talking about I don't know if it was a guy or a girl, but she was saying that she had a congenital heart defect and she had a friend, quote unquote, who loved her for it and told her what a wonder, and hung out with her and you know, and and then she went in, had surgery, got that congenital heart defect fixed, and her friends turned on her. Said, "Why would you go in and have an operation? Why do you hate yourself so much?" The irony is that the friend in question is a post-op tranny. Cannot understand irony. Well, anyway, I've been right. In this one point in the story is that and the great Alicorn Hunt, they've come to the story is focusing on Rainbow Dash School, and they're at the city at Windy City, which is become it's a Pegasus community largely traditionally. And the reason is because Windy City is basically a mountain that is so high that it pokes up through the clouds. And because of this, because it is because it's still on the ground, yet get you up, can get you up into the upper atmosphere. The it started becoming a settling down place for Pegasi who were handicapped or who were too elderly, so couldn't fly safely anymore. And consequentially, over the years, it became a center of it had a very high handicap population, and it became a center of places where they treated the handicapped. Unfortunately, it also became the center of a progressive liberal arts university, and uh, the typical bunches of useless students and their Ivy Tower professors started pushing, among other things, their victim class identity thing. Embrace your identity as a handicapped person. And the story basically Rainbow Dash goes to an expert in the field of dealing with handicapped Pegasus, right? The ones that can't fly or weak flyers or have trouble flying, and he's an expert in the field. He's a pediatrician. He deals with he deals with handicapped children, and especially with those handicapped foals, especially Pegasi foals who can't fly. And he tries to he puts them in treatment programs and tries to improve their flying ability or to even cure them if he can. And he's the best in his field. But the clinic he works for has bought this whole uh, you know victim identity thing. It says and they've come to conclusion. We've decided that the best approach for dealing with this, is to get them, is to give them counseling and help them to fit into the handicap community. And his lament to Rainbow Dash is that it used to, it used to be common sense that if you found something was broken, you tried to fix it. And he said, when did that stop being right? I wrote that chapter, I put that out, and I got so many responses, all sorts of country, of course, the usual. It's interesting. It's not the actual handicapped who are getting in my grill about this. It's their, self-appointed mouthpieces. And it's also a large number of these tranny community and their supporters who are throwing a fit at me. I've got tons of commentary from people with handicap problems, various problems, things like everything from autism to ADHD to physical handicap, heart conditions, lung conditions, and they're saying, yeah, they're just like this. I know people like this. I have a friend, I have a cousin, I have a brother, and they're like, preach it. But these people who pride themselves on being so sympathetic and so compassionate and so understanding and so empathetic to the plight of the handicapped and the crippled and the victims, they're angry at me for suggesting that they need cure. What the buttered hell? What the buttered bunt pan fried hell? I think we would improve this nation, if we just burned down the colleges and told everybody that was go home. You want to learn some crap? Just get a correspondence course. We used to burn down plague towns. That was what stopped the Black Plague. Was when the Black Plague in England, when Pudding Lane caught fire. And fire basically, you get a city full of filthy people with bad sanitation and and bad plumbing and bad sanitation, and you get tons and tons and tons of rats. And the rats had fleas, and the fleas carried the plague, and people were dying like flies. And then they had a fire that burned out a huge section of London, and it killed off all the rats and the fleas, which stopped the spread of the spread of this plague. It used to be that a house that was infested, that had people dying from the plague or whatever, they burn it down. Here, we give it a government grant. Pardon. Just an unending supply of crazy out there. Saw a clip. Steven Crowder and several other web personalities, conservative spokespeople. Steven Crowder. Look him up on YouTube. He's called Louder with Crowder. Anyway, he and a couple other people, couple of men, they were having a round table at some college. Let me see here. And some land whale. I mean, she showed up and she started throwing, they were telling a joke, having a round, and she started trying, boo, boo, just throwing it, just throwing a typical trigger trauma girl temper tantrum. Can't find the images. Hold on. And Crowder was not fooling around. He was not in a mood. He proceeded to rip her. He proceeded to rip her backside into three different pieces. He just got up. I mean, he got every. Nobody cares what you have to say. You know why I'm saying that? Because I'm not your gender studies professor. And he just basically 10 minutes of just ripping everybody hooting and applauding as he just reamed her out. The rest of the people on the stage are just sitting there smirking. Some of them looking like, "Damn, get clear of the splatter zone." I mean, organs were hanging from tree limbs by the time he was done. He just spent like 5 minutes just up and down that stage, just blasting her with it. And I'm like, "It shut her up." And I'm like, "Damn, why aren't we doing that?" This is our problem. This is our problem. We have let them dictate the terms by which we engage them. And they have reinterpreted being civilized as being, they have reinterpreted, "Oh, you're not acting much like a Christian." When did we start listening to them? When they started telling us what it meant to be polite and civilized and Christian. It's interesting how people who think that Jesus uh, was just a man and that his followers ruined the world, when you start getting up in their face and making it clear you're not going to take any more of their bullcrap, they start going, "Well, you're not acting much like Jesus." I think they missed the bulletin where flipping tables and chasing people around with a whip is on the list of possible options. Jesus was loving, he was forgiving, he was kind, but he was also not afraid in the least to outrage people. He made people so mad that on at least two different occasions they tried to stone him. On another occasion, he told them something they didn't want to hear, and they tried to throw him off a cliff. He made people seething mad at him. And in the end, they nailed him to a cross. We've let them dictate the terms where they can scream and yell and shout and throw temper tantrums in public and yell over top of people who are speaking and basically act like animals. And we're supposed to sit there like a bunch of terrified little kids in their first debate class holding their little 8 by 10 cards, shaking for fear that they'll step over the line. That's how we're supposed to behave. While they can, chimp out and fling poo. It's time we started taking a hose to some of these monkeys. Get out the garden hose. We have got to stop pretending like they have something rational to bring to the discussion. It's given them delusions of adequacy. They're hiding the image. There's one particular land whale advocate of among other things, advocating the healthy at all sizes. Basically, because okay, this woman was so huge, she makes me look skinny. Okay, and I weigh almost 400. I weigh over 400 pounds. Yeah, I'm that sad. I really am. I won't deny it. I am a physical mess. This woman was a land whale. Each of her arms was bigger around than my head. And she got this big old ball of hair on top of her head. She's got this big bun. She hair up in a bun on the top of her head. And of course, the little square, thick frame glasses. I mean, you remember this chick? You remember this chick? This new crazy bitch makes this chick look conserved, reserved and polite. Okay? I mean, she was yelling and screaming and shaking her arm just over her head. Moo. Go eat some swamp leaves, you beluga. You manatee with feet. Good night. I can't begin to describe. I mean, these is just the crazy that came out. It took. It's distressing that uh, the level of crazy that's come out of the woodwork is not for my. I mean, already I'd hoped that it would be a little longer before the truly batshit insane found their way into my comments section. Now that I move stories. I'm just glad that there's other people. There seems to be more people. These people are full of crap. And quite frankly, in this time, it seems like it's just one or two people. Yes, they're so outraged. I've said this. I say this, or I'll say it here too. Look, if there is a treatment or a cure, God willing, if you're a handicapped person, if you are physically handicapped, and they develop a treatment or a cure, and you refuse it, I believe I have a right to question the stability of your emotions. And your mental stability. I mean, I can understand being reluctant about it. I'm not talking about, this treatment is highly experimental and you're not really sure about it, or you have worries about affording it, or things like that. Sensible concerns about the procedure. I'm talking, you find out about this treatment, you can afford it. You have your, all the ducks are in a row, and you say, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to give up being deaf or blind, or having one leg missing. I don't want to give that up. I have a right, I think I have a responsibility to question your mental stability. It is not natural. It is not normal. It is not mentally healthy to want to be lame rather than whole. Actual case, a woman who, when she was a child, she was, it's called, oh, what was the term? It's a disorder, a mental disorder, uh, body identity disorder, I believe. Body integrity identity disorder. Is where these people who are obsessed with getting, with getting an amputation, or being made blind, or becoming deaf, or any one of a no, any one of a number of handicaps. There was a woman that had this case, and when she was a child, from the time she was about a teenager, she became obsessed with becoming blind, with being a blind person. She would deliberately stare into the sun as long as she could, trying to make herself blind. She walked around with a cane or wore dark glasses, so dark enough so you couldn't see. So she pretended to be a blind person, and she she actually found a therapist who helped her do this. He helped her pour drain cleaner into her own eyes. There are other people who have gone and they have hunted around until they have found a doctor unscrupulous enough to give them an amputation, to cut off their arm, to cut off their legs. Now, compare that with the story told you earlier about the family, the deaf family. Their son was born deaf, but he could be cured with, with a cochlear. They could all probably have been cured with a cochlear implant, but they refused it because they didn't want him to, they thought that he would, they didn't want him to give up his place in the deaf community. Now, tell me, is there any practical difference between somebody who wants to be maimed Is there, in the end result, is there any difference between somebody who wants to have their whole healthy body maimed and somebody who refuses to have their unwhole, maimed body made whole? Is there any difference? Is there any practical difference? They're both crippled as an outcome. And they're both kept crippled as an outcome. That's the result. It's the same kind of crazy. And that's the kind of crazy that's walking our streets now. And the deeper crazy is the fact that we are no longer allowed to call it crazy. You're a hate monger. You're a hate monger if you say it's crazy to chop off your own leg. If it's crazy to chop off your, and by the way, here's another point I'm making, is that if it's crazy to chop off your own leg, it's crazy to chop off your own dick. All right? But I've been a woman inside since. No, you have not been a woman inside. The only time you were a man trapped in a woman's body was 1 minute before your birth. All right. After that, now if you there's a spokesman on there's a pundit commentator on YouTube called the Black Pigeon. He comments a lot on things, social issues like gender issues and sexism and racism and Islam and all this other crap, and the social impact of things like feminism and all these other things have had on Western civilization. I don't agree with him on everything, but he is very spoken. He is very thoughtful. He thinks out his arguments, and he references sources. Now, among other things, he was talking about this transgender issue, and he pointed out that it wasn't long ago there was a doctor did some research. They had patients that had the transgender a man who insisted that he was a woman. They put him on a medication for another unrelated uh, condition. And the moment he went on it, after he was on it, he reported the convictions that he stopped having those urges to insist that he was a woman, and that literally it changed him mentally. This particular drug influences a very particular area of the body in the mind, in the brain. It isn't. They lowered the medication, and he started exhibiting the whole, transgender symptoms again. Then they return the medication to the levels they had it before, and again it stopped. It's a very real possibility that transgenderism is a neurological condition, the same as, for instance, uh, for instance, autism or attention deficit disorder or uh, uh, obsessive compulsive disorder. But no, you know, apparently nobody's pursuing this avenue of research because it's not politically correct to say that somebody can be cured of these urges. It's not politically correct to say that it can be treated, because you'll hurt their precious snowflake feelings. He makes his point. It's one thing to have a community of sufferers, a group of people coming together who are trying to overcome their illness or their handicap. But when you start promoting, but when you start accepting the handicap or the illness as an identity, you're not helping. You're not promoting the welfare of the people involved. You are promoting the illness. We accept this. We accept this as a given in so many other ways. I mean, look at the issue with anorexia. Look at the issue with anorexia. We accept as self-evident when our society puts horribly underweight women up on a pedestal, that it promotes anorexia among the young, because these young women especially, they look up at these idolized half-starved women, and these girls will do the exact same thing, half kill themselves. It isn't just modeling that is the problem with this. Ballet, and dance. Uh, uh, these ballet tutors push these girls to starve themselves, quite literally. Perfectly healthy young girls. Because they want to be so slender and graceful. And you have the same problem with weightlifters and bodybuilders and young men. These men that look like this, they do not get that way without abusing steroids. They don't. They are not physically very strong either. These uh, bodybuilders, in part because they're muscle bound. And this is the interesting thing, is that that triangle shaped body they're looking for, great big wide shoulders and chest, and narrow skinny abs and hips, and they're not very strong at all. They can't really lift that much. They're not strong because the lower back is weak, and their abdominal muscles, their core muscles, their core body strength is feeble. The muscles in their abdomen, stomach, and chest, they're weak. and and the reason you've seen the weightlifting pros. The reason they look like is because they dehydrate themselves before they go on stage. That's how they look so cut. These weightlifters, they will use laxatives and diuretics to dehydrate themselves right before. There was one guy who was in weightlifting. He said he would see these guys pass around a suppository, and it's just to make themselves uh, lose as much water weight as possible to make themselves look cut. Movies, same problem. All those scenes with the Wolverine guy. All these actors like Wolverine and the guy that played Wolverine, the guy that played Captain America, and all the shirtless scenes that these men do. You ever notice how ripped they look? I mean, seriously ripped. They do not look like that normally. And no, it's not Photoshop. Is what they do is there's one guy when Hollywood Reporter, he was behind the scenes on one of these sets, and the guy plays Wolverine. It was the strangest thing. He said he noticed that the guy at the drop of a hat, he would drop down and start doing push-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's just banging them out, and you start doing doing reps. And he realized that he wasn't showing off. He was doing it right before going on camera to get the blood pumping, because when they do that, the blood rushes into their muscles and makes them swole and makes them look more cut. So when you see those shirtless scenes, just a split second before he stepped in front of the camera, he was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's practically dying of exhaustion, just so that you can see those cheese grater abs. and you can see all those veins popping in his arms and chest and everywhere. And we accept that that this sort of thing is causing problems with young women, and we're starting to admit that it's a problem with young men too, that they have an unrealistic expectation of their bodies, insanely unrealistic. One of the little half truths that the fat advocates let out, but we will not accept the idea that when we laud and praise and preen and primp and shower approval on people with dysfunctional lifestyles, these mutilated men and mutilated women who are trying to pose as the opposite gender, these people who dress up in as the opposite sex, these bisexual, gay, lesbian, trans. I'm sorry. It is self-evident that they are doing that which is contrary to health, sanity, and biology. Our society praises what they do, praises how they look, praises how they look. I mean, look at Bruce Jenner. He can't, he gets a boob job, and suddenly the media, which has forgotten about him since the '80s, is humping his leg. And we don't think that this doesn't have an effect on the rest of society. Or if we say it, you're a hate monger. You hurt my darn you and your reality. The truth is hate to those who hate the truth. It has never been more basic than that. And it will never be any more basic than that. The tragedy is there's not much you can do for these people. The only thing you can do is stop humoring them. Stop humoring the crazy people. When you engage them, after a certain point, when you engage them in debate, you're just confirming to them that they have an argument to make. You should only engage them enough to get across that no, here's the facts. You're in contradiction with them. Now go away. We don't have time for you. When you let a crazy person up to the podium, you're just legitimizing their crazy. And when you let them go out there and start flinging poo and screeching and chimping out, throwing tantrums, shouting down speakers, chasing them off, and you stand there trying to look all dignified. They're not impressed with how dignified you are. Any more than a pig is impressed with you wearing a tuxedo. A pig doesn't care how fancy you dress when you dish out the slops. Okay? He'll knock you down in the mud no matter what you're wearing, okay? They want to behave, they think, they act, they reason, and they behave like tantrum throwing children. Treat them like children. Stupidest thing I've ever seen is these parents that think, oh, I never strike my child, I never paddle my child, I never punish. I sit them down and tell them, and calmly and patiently explain to them that what they're doing is wrong. How well's that sailing for you? You get it. You're pulling up to the police station to get them out of to pay their bail again. How well is that working out for you? Just 5-year-old talking to a 5-year-old kid like they're a 20-year-old adult. No. And when a 20-year-old adult starts acting like a 5-year-old child, treat them like a 5-year-old child. I've seen these riots that these people are throwing. Black Lives Matter. They ought to bring back the riot hoses. It is time to roll out the tanker trucks and start using those riot hoses again. you'd open up a garden hose on a dog crapping on your lawn. And I've said this before. I remember back when they started chimping out over the Gulf War. One group of them finally pushed it too far, tried to block the entrance, the entrance and exit gates to a military, uh, you know, uh, uh, a station where they were bringing in hardware for the troops and shipping it out. They tried to block the gates with a human chain, and the guards stopped fooling around. And they brought out the rubber bullets. And the next day, these little pussies were out on Facebook. Oh, look at this bruise I got from those brutal policemen, from those brutal guards, and not getting no sympathy. And guess what? It stopped. The poofing and tantrums stopped. Then it was Kent State. Kent State. Oh, they mercilessly shot down those children. Yeah, because those poor children were rioting. I've seen some of the footage they don't show you of Kent State. They were smashing windows and they were throwing bricks at men with guns. If you do that, if you throw a brick at a man with a gun, congratulations, here's your Darwin Award. They went out there screaming and yelling tantrum, and they started to charge and throw brick. They started throwing bricks and crap at these troopers, and those troopers did what the troopers are supposed to do when a bunch of rioting animals starts bearing down on them. They dropped down, they picked up their guns, and they opened fire. And what a surprise! That was the end of the Great Revolution. You didn't read about them doing that kind of crap after that. Not for decades, not for years, not for decades. What, you mean the man will shoot back? You say you want a revolution. Surprise, honey. Wasn't such a groovy time, was it? I'm a heartless son of a gun, I tell you. I heard about that one guy, that guy who thought was brother to the Grizzlies. Some granola crunchy out in California went out and took his girlfriend. He would go out and he would bother the bears. I'm not joking. He would go out and he would stand. He would get as close as he could get, standing, a few, just within a few yards of them, and film, and photograph and film himself doing that, flipping retarded. And one day he went out. What happened to him? He got eaten by a bear. Him and his girlfriend. They know exactly what happened because they found his tape recorder. He's playing his tape. God only knows why he was running. He's probably making some documentary notes for himself. He said, "Oh, look, honey." He's like, "Oh, look, honey, it's my friend Yogi." Ah, 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 ah. I laughed my butt off. Clean off, clang, lying there on the floor. There it was. There's some people that shouldn't be let out in public without one of those toddler leashes. Grown men and women walking around in public, lower IQ than the soy burger they had for lunch. Every time you hear a dumb story, every time you hear a story about a dumb person, you want to get a picture of how bad things are out there. You just think the next time you hear a story about somebody doing something really, really, really stupid, add this sentence at the end, and then they voted. One day of doing that, and you'll be out there getting yourself a bomb shelter bunker out underneath your backyard and stocking it full of shotgun shells and canned beans. The more I see this side, the more I feel like Jonah got, like Jonah got the short end of the stick. This is, everybody wondered why Jonah did that. Why was he so? Why did he hate the people of Nineveh so much? There's some people say, because Nineveh persecuted the Jews. That's possible, but I think it was just on general principle. I really do. I think it was just that these people violated every principle of God's laws and just simple sanity. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and and the reason Jonah didn't want to go to these people is because he wanted to see them finally reap what they sowed, and probably because he was fed up. He's just fed up with hearing about what the people in Nineveh had gotten up to next. I guarantee you, if they thought a nuke was going, there are tons of people justifiably If they heard that Washington D.C. was going to be taken out by a tactical nuke, they would be up on the hills outside of that city with a picnic blanket, a pair of binoculars. They'd have their own bunker. They'd have a nice little sandbag bunker, picnic basket, and a bag of popcorn. Talking to each other over the intercom, over their cell phones or on their microphone on walkie. Has it happened yet? Not yet. Not yet. I don't see anything yet. See anything? No, no. I haven't seen the guy with the suitcase yet. No. You're sure that our congressman is in town at the moment, right? Because we can go get him. Yeah. And it comes out at the end. Jonah was pissed. He was pissed off that they got spared. God had to remind him at the end, that there were, it wasn't just, the teeming masses. There was people involved, and shouldn't he spare? I mean, he said, "Come on, think. There are children there so young they don't even know the right hand from the left, and if nothing else, what about the animals that live there? Shouldn't they be spared? Shouldn't you have, or rather, shouldn't you have some pity for them?" More, but getting off the point is, uh, these people are not just making their own lives difficult anymore. It was fine back in the days when they stuck to Berserkly and stayed there. But they're out there lobbying. They're out there lobbying. They're out there voting. They're out there ruining the rest of the country. It's depressing and it's exhausting and it's infuriating. You can't reason with these people because they think reason is a hate crime. Something, is something so dogmatically horrible that they can't even contemplate it. really is. It really is frustrating. And I think that's what got me down as far as cartooning is, because there are no jokes left. I feel like there are no jokes left. Because what am I going to do? Write yet another joke about how high taxes are, or write another joke about how irrational feminists are? And I feel like all the commentary has been made, all the jokes have been told, and they stop being funny. And I feel like at this point, just repeating myself. What do you do then? Okay, in other news, as always, shaking the hat. Uh, Managed to get the electric bill paid. Not the electric bill, the internet bill paid just in time for this month. But what I was saying is I got the internet bill paid, but the electric bill is still outstanding. And they want a massive chunk of change for that. And if the electricity goes off, well, basically I die. Uh, so if you could spare a couple of dollars, if you would throw it in the kitty, it'd be nice. Well, it's better if you throw it in the hat. The kitty doesn't like it when you do that. Meow! You know, cat going, that doesn't go there. Uh, Taking commissions, of course. I've still got a few commissions. I think I still got a couple of commissions I got to do. Still got to finish this graphic novel I'm working on here. Still, but as always, I'm taking commissions. Uh, you can make donations. I got comics for sale. Yay! Just go up to the go to my homepage, www.rhjunior.com. There's a button for PayPal if you want to make a one-time donation. There's a button for Patreon if you want to become a patron and support me on a regular basis. And I did pick up a couple of patrons who came over from Archive of Our Own. They read my fan fictions. They came over, saw my comics, and said, "Hey, we'll fund this guy." And it'd be groovy if I could get more. So, there's also, you go up top, and there is a thing where you can, there are buttons to order commissions. There are pages to order commissions, and a page to order a comic book. I've got several collections. For those who don't know, I've got several graphic novels and collections of comic strips for sale through through kablam.com. They're available. You click on go to the website. Here, let me go to the website. Is there anybody there? I'm wondering here. Go to www.rhjunior.com. Go over here, and you see up top, the top row, you got my archives. You can buy stuff here. Buy, B-U-Y. Commissions. This is a page where you make the commissions. Go to the buy page. And, okay, I've got an archival DVD for sale. It holds some updated content. I'm making these every year now. This is the 2015 DVD. It's $20 plus $2 shipping. It arrives in the mail in a little. It's a DVD in a little paper envelope. I also have, as you can see here, several different books for sale. Just click on the one you like. I've got a book for Camp Calamine, collection for Camp Calamine, the original collection for Under the Lemon Tree. 3 volumes of Nip and Tuck. And a volume of Quentin Quinn Space Ranger, and 3 volumes for Tales of the Questor. Or those. There's not much of a profit margin on them, but there they are. Yay! I never wanted to rely heavily on, I always wanted to be more reliant on sales of books and stuff. I always felt like when I'm selling a book or a DVD or a commission, then I'm giving quality. I'm giving a material object. I'm old fashioned. I think that when you give me money, I should be giving you something material back. I tried to sell things like T-shirts and coffee mugs and things, but nobody seemed to want them. It's one of the confusing things about it. I guess it's because dropping a couple of bucks in a donate, hitting a donate button and dropping a couple of bucks is, it's a much easier impulse buy. But when you drop the same amount of money for a coffee mug, that's a commitment. Because now you're waiting for the coffee mug to arrive in the mail. I don't know. I don't know. You tell me. Yay, we have somebody here. Okay, for some reason. the display window on my health on my web stream thingy, it's not showing. It's not showing the live feed. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Okay, let me refresh this page a little bit. Try that. Dear Microsoft, you suck. Anyway, and if you want to, you go up here. It says, okay, you go to the buy button. I really should have named that store or shop or something. I'll probably change that later. You want to make a commission? You go to commissions. You click commissions. Dun 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 dun. And you go down below the buxom raccoon. Okay, you can get a cameo commission. For $40, you can get a single full color strip featuring your character in Nip and Tuck, Camp Calamine, Goblin Hollow, or Tally Ho. For $100, you get 5 black and white strips in Nip and Tuck, Camp Calamine, Goblin Hollow, or Tally Ho, or a single page cameo in either Space Ranger or Tales of the Questor. And there's a little button down here is cameo options. It's got a little scroll down window, so you can make your choice. And a little buy now button. This is for black and white commissions. There are your options there. 1 character, $20, 2 characters, $30, 3 characters, $40, so on and so forth. And then you go down here for a full color commission, which is 1 character, 40, 50, 60, so on. Bloody, blazity, blazity. You get the general idea. There we go. Oh, in case you're wondering, these buttons along the side, these are, you just scroll down the page. That's a problem with having these. We've got wide screens, but we haven't got tall screens. Yet we have tall websites. Explain that one. But anyway, you scroll down here. Okay, over on the right-hand side, you got the Patreon button if you want to be a Patreon donor. You got a donate button if you want to make a one-time donation. I've already said that. And down here, these little windows here are to the archives of each of my strips. You know, the ones that are running currently, the ones that are currently on hiatus. I won't say canceled anymore because I never know when I'm going to be doing something new in a new area. If I get interest in a certain area, I might just start doing it again. Okay, we got up here at top is the probability bomb. That is the Kickstarter funded graphic novel that I am writing, and it has been a slog. It is ongoing. It is a slog, and basically it was very popular, but I crank it out slowly, a page at a time, and when it is done, I will be also drawing a character gallery of all the people that donated. You know, the people that donated at different levels will, they have cameo appearances in the story. The main villain donated a huge chunk of cash, but anyway, that's ongoing. That's what I'm working on currently. Now, there's also Nip and Tuck, Camp Calamine, Under the Lemon Tree, and we also have the archives for Goblin Hollow, Tally Ho. Goblin Hollow is basically Goblin Hollow and Under the Lemon Tree. There's a lot of overlap because Under the Lemon Tree was the original incarnation of Goblin Hollow. the Goblin Hall under the lemon tree idea, it's been a difficult one. It's gone through a lot of phases, and I'm thinking of putting it through a new one. Currently, all the characters in Goblin Hollow are anthropomorphic, and I have been toying with the idea of doing a new generation where they are doing it, redoing it, where they are human, at least the non-goblin characters, and starting the alternate version with uh, Ben and Lily's kid, picking up the story, but just no explanation. They're all human now. You know, I explain nothing. It's got Tally Ho. The Witch Hunter comic idea. I'm really not sure about that. I was never really fully comfortable with it. Uh, but there it is. The West Pole, undefined. Journal entries. That's a side thing for the Journal of Ennius Longscript, which is a side thing for uh, Tales of the Questor. Has lots of little, you consider it as sort of a resource book or think of it as like one of those little source books for Star Wars or, you know, fills in some of the side details that haven't popped up in the book in the actual comic yet. And Fellowship of Heroes is another thing that I was trying to make one way, trying to be overtly Christian with that. I've come to a conclusion though. When it comes to, I'm not good at what you'd call didactic comics. When I pay more attention, uh, to the story, I do get up on a soapbox even with the stuff I do for fun. But generally, when I put the passion of making a good story first, it turns out better. This is why I've never been fully comfortable with Witch Hunter or the Fellowship of Heroes or some of the other things I did that were, you know, religious message type things. I don't know. It's like when I try to do deliberate, it's like I'm chasing my tail. When I just go about my business, and just go forward and focus on the story, it follows along behind. Don't know if I'm phrasing that in a very clear way, but you get what I'm saying, I think. I look at other Christians professing Christians that write this stuff that do didactic and they do it well. I mean, like C.S. Lewis. And I'm like, why doesn't this overt uh, spiritual theme flow from myself? Why doesn't it flow naturally for me? And I'm like, it kind of makes me question, my own faith, my own Christianity sometimes. If I was really, if I, if I really had uh, the Holy Spirit guiding me. If I was really, if I really had Jesus in my heart, I would be better at this. If I really this, if I really that. Anyway, let's see here. Anything else I need to? Oh, you got interesting. I forgot that I have a little update thingy. Yeah. This I did not know. It's a recent update thing. Maybe I should move this up to the top. I don't know. Oh yeah, and I've got a list of Patreon. I've got to add to that list. This is supposed to be one column, but it's not in there right. I also take Bitcoin. I haven't looked at my Bitcoin account in almost a year. I don't think I have a Bitcoin in there. Does anybody do Bitcoin still? Probably some fanatics. Oh, by the way, all my original content, all my artwork, all my writings, is released under Creative Commons Attribution License. That means if you want to make copies of it, great. If you want to post it on your website, great. If you want to make coffee mugs and T-shirts with my characters, great, fine, terrific. But you do have to give me attribution as the original artist. This character created by Ralph Hayes Jr. Based on works by Ralph Hayes Jr. That's what the Creative Commons button thingy, Creative Commons licenses thingy right here means. Frankly, because the base copyright laws as they are in this country, there's no benefit to me. There's no benefit to me to be dog in the mangerish. And quite frankly, the protections I need, the copyright law does not provide. It's a bluff. It's all a bluff. You know why? Because your stuff is protected under copyright if you've got Disney's lawyers. All right? If somebody steals your stuff and uses it themselves, you'd better have a lawyer. You'd better have deep pockets. You'd better either have deep pockets to pay a lawyer, or or the person who has stolen from you had better have pockets deep enough to arouse the greed gland in a lawyer to take you on. And I realized at one point, on a sort of level, that me putting copyright, mine. It basically boiled down to me hoping that somebody rich would try and steal from me. Under the delusion that I would be able to get rich by suing them. When the way it really works out, generally in real life, is that you get broke. A good example of this, McDonald's Corporation. I'm going to say this, I have nothing against corporations as a concept. And most of them are just trying to do business. But man, some of them can be real rat bastards. I'm sure the things that you got to remember that the CEOs, the head honchos, are not a permanent fixture. So the ethics of a corporation will change as time goes by. But back in the 70s, very early, late 60s, early 70s, there was a Sid and Marty Krofft program called H.R. Puffin Stuff. Now, Sid and Marty Krofft were contacted by McDonald's. McDonald's wanted to do a crossover promotional. They wanted Sid and Marty Krofft's HR Puff and Stuff characters to sell their hamburgers. We'd like you to do this promotional there. Now, they talked for months. They talked for like a year, and then suddenly the McDonald's people stopped talking to them. And about a year after that, McDonald's came out with McDonald Land. Now, here, let me. Now, the thing of it is, here, let me show you this. McDonald Land. They looked at McDonald Land, and holy crap, it was a ripoff. I mean, point for point, a ripoff, stylistically, of HR Puffin Stuff. I'm looking for images here. So HR Puffin Stuff sued. Sid and Marty Krofft sued, and they won. Here, let me show you here. Sid and Marty Krofft won. They took them to court and they won because it was so obvious. Look, there's HR Puffin Stuff. He's almost a dead ringer for Mayor McCheese and Big Mac the cop. Look, there's Mayor McCheese, HR Puffin Stuff. Mayor McCheese, HR Puffin Stuff. Anyway, they sued and they won. And they got a couple of $1,000. HR Puffin Stuff is no longer on TV, but they still use McDonald Land. Almost, it's exactly the same as when they made it. Did Sid and Marty Krofft a whole lot of good to sue, didn't it? This is why I don't, this is why I went with Creative Commons, because it's only been a handicap for me. Because the regular copyright has only been a handicap for me. It doesn't protect my stuff, uh, and it has resulted in people constantly coming to me. They ask me, "You don't mind if we use this for this, or this here, do you? We don't want to. We don't want to violate your copyright. You know." And I have to wonder how many people never came forward to me, people who might have used my stuff and effectively promoted me and made me more well known and more popular, but they're scared to use my comics in like their church bulletin or their school newspaper or whatever, because they're afraid that I'll come. I got a lawyer. I'm going to sue. And it has been almost useless in protecting my work. And that's no lie. It's been almost useless. I had a case where this happened to me couple years back. I got contacted by another Christian artist who informed me that he discovered that his artwork, his characters, were being used by a pornographer, a real circus freak, who was taking his characters and his Vicky Fox character and drawing her in lesbian porn with his other characters, and he was in the process of suing the guy, issuing a cease and desist order actually. And he was collecting and found out that my characters were being used too. And we both sent a cease and desist order. And the web host that was hosting this guy dropped him like a hot rock. And not a few months later, he had a new website up on another host. I don't know if the guy that writes Vicky Fox ever cornered the guy and got him to stop. Uh, but my ability to research that, he basically moved to a private host, and after that, I could call his bluff. But unless I was willing to plunk down cash for a lawyer, I'm out of luck. So a guy like me can be abused by unscrupulous copyright violators all the time. And there is effectively not a thing I can do about it. But if one of these fat cats even thinks that I am getting too close to his copyright, he can jump all over me and shut me down for life. I could be destroyed with little effort by one of them. This is why I make everything Creative Commons. So the original work that I do uh, will persist on. Intellectual property is a dicey area, and it's a difficult place to hold your ground. And it's one of the big problems with our legal system is uh, uh, property rights, uh, intellectual property rights, uh, lawsuits for defamation of character, libel, slander, um, violation of intellectual property. Those areas our legal system panders to the side with the richest lawyers. It says something that when justice is done in the courts of the land, it is cause for celebration as a rare, as a unexpected event. when criminals go free, it's not even a cause for surprise. Not that I'm bitter or anything. Oh, I do. I do display the commissions. I put them up on DeviantArt. I put them up on the website. I run them as slideshows here on the show. Yeah, John Kruger. I've like I said, it's been a long couple of weeks. Just just having one of those days where I was just one of those stretches where I was creatively constipated. Managed to do a couple of chapters of The Great Alicorn Hunt, which is on archiveofourown.org. And already I'm generating controversy because I propose the wild, radical, controversial idea that illnesses and injuries and handicaps should be healed. My, what a wild-eyed revolutionary you've been. Got a lot of people speaking out in support of me. A lot of people who are handicapped saying, yeah, what I'm saying. And got a couple of idiots, though. I've already talked about that. Oh, yeah, comment section on the last chapter went kablooey. The stupid goes on forever. What can I say? I hold with that. Doctor Hospice. I mean, one of my characters is called Doctor Hospice Care, and one of the things he says, it used to be, it used to be that when you knew when something was, it was common sense. When something was broken, you fixed it. When did that become wrong? I love the, like I said, there was one guy that wrote in. He said, uh, I don't know if it was a man or a woman. He said his friend, her friend, uh, yeah, the guy that wrote the one that wrote the comment said that they had a friend. The writer had a congenital heart defect, and the friend loved him for it. You know, was all over him about it, and finally, the commenter went in and had surgery, had the congenital heart defect fixed. and the friend broke it off with him. And he said, "Well, why do you hate yourself so much that you had to go and have yourself cut open and have surgery done on your body?" The irony was is that the friend in question is a female to male tranny. And apparently, like most mentally disturbed people, didn't quite pick up on the irony of what she was saying. Oh, Kruger. Like I said, I haven't been able to get anything done in some time. Would you do me a favor, Kruger? Post me an email with a reminder of what I owe you. I'm serious. I'm surprised at the number of people who wrote in and said, I have this problem, I have that problem, and I know what you're talking about. These idiots uh, who don't want me to get treated. And I'm like, the world is crazier than I thought. Yeah, I'm broadcasting again. I've just been. Uh, what a world! What a world! Okay, I gotta go tinkle. I'll be back in a minute. The artist has gone tinkle. He will be right back. Please stay tuned. Well, I feel about 5 pounds lighter and a quart low. I'm sick of talking about tranny people. I read some, heard something recently that says that they've been doing some, they had to do, well, the research had to be clandestine because thanks to our all-knowing, all-wise overseers in the government, it's illegal to even research this stuff. But they've had research come in, evidence come in that microdoses of LSD might actually be useful for treating neurological, psychological problems. And we're talking microdoses. They said that the typical tripping balls dose is like 200 micrograms, and but for the doses they're talking something like 15 micrograms. So like 1/5, like 1/20th or less of the necessary knock you off your rails dose. They said it's the experimentation. They proved that it seems to improve mental function, helps with insomnia, improves mental focus, and creativity. But that's a very subjective thing to measure. Well, basically, they're saying that the people that did this with the microdoses, they said that they were able to focus longer on tasks. They were also able, they also able to focus on creative efforts, and they seemed to flow better. They were able to keep it longer. They were also be more productive, be more creative. The insomnia helped with insomnia. It helped with several others. Uh, 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 Mental or neurological issues. It's kind of tragic because if this is true, this is an interesting field of research uh, with interesting implications. But our society, our government is too interested in playing nanny to let us. They won't even let us experiment with these things. And that's why it's a crock about so many things they say. There's no proof that that marijuana does any of the things they claim. Of course, there's no proof, because if you tried to get the proof, you would get arrested. They basically made it a crime to do any real clinical medical research. They made it a crime for decades to do any clinical medical research with an entire array of controlled substances. So what are you going to do? As always, progress is delayed because somebody else knows better than the rest, better than everybody else in the world what's best for us. What can you do? I mean, now this commentator that I've been talking about this on YouTube. His name is he goes by Black Pigeon. He's got some he's got some very what are considered the term controversial views. I hate that term. It's a term used by people who want to make you sound like a wild-eyed lunatic when all you're it's a controversial view. Yes, if you're a Hollywood dipstick, it's controversial. It contradicts what we've been preaching from the media. It's controversial. Controversial. That's, controversial is a word they throw around to throw doubt on the veracity of the research and the reasoning of it's poisoning the well. Anyway, Black Pigeon, he writes on some very uh, controversial topics. He writes, he writes from a conservative perspective, a large conservative libertarian perspective, on things like racism, sexism, racism, gender issues, uh, the transgender, transsexual issues, uh, politics around Islam, that kind of thing. And he's not apologetic about the titles he uses. One of the titles of one of the videos he writes is "Why Women Destroy Civilizations," and you know that the majority of people who read this just read who heard that and watched it, and because they got made comments in the comment section because they got their mad on. But watch the video. He makes some very pointed and unsettling arguments, and addresses some very unhappy facts. Anyway, in one of his videos, he pointed out that one of the things is that he points out in a very short video that conservative ideals, we don't have to worry about conservative ideals disappearing because they prove themselves. They resurface over and over and over. What we do have to worry about, though he doesn't say it in so many words, is the disappearance of our society, of our culture, of our civilization, of the collapse of our civilization. He says liberal ideas cannot sustain themselves. Liberal ideas can only spring into fruition. They can only gain root atop a mountain of success laid down by their conservative predecessors. If you try, in a third world or Stone Age environment, in a survival oriented situation, if you tried to push liberal ideas, you would die. They would kill you. Not the people, the ideals you were trying to push. They would result in your death. All the mush-headed liberal thinking that is going on right now only can exist. It's parasitic. Liberalism is parasitic. It can only exist off the successes of others because it can produce no success itself. It takes, it does not create. But civilizations go through this cycle. Uh, Conservative ideals arise, resulting in progress. The progress continues, the civilization grows, becomes prosperous, becomes wealthy, becomes secure, becomes decadent. Irrational, liberal ideas start to surface, undermine the society in which they are produced, and the civilization collapses until conservative ideals resurface and the process is started all over again, which is really dang depressing. Oh. The question is not whether conservatism will survive, whether conservatism will survive. The question is whether or not our culture, our civilization will survive. What can we do to prevent this collapse? And speaking personally, I think that we're over the hump. I think that we have gone. We've slid too far downhill to reverse course. We had a wake up call 15, 16 years ago. 15 years ago, the barbarism and savagery of the world that is waiting to overtake us all killed 3,000 of our own while the rest of us watched. And for a brief moment, we woke up, and we realized that the barbarians were at the gates, and that we did not have time to listen to the silliness that our progressive intellectuals were spewing everywhere. We woke up, we got together, and we went out to face the enemy. And then we stumbled, we fell to our knees, and we fell back asleep. And now we are in a position that is worse than the one we left behind. We went out to fight the Muslims. We wouldn't admit the full truth that it is Christendom versus Islam. This is the war. This is the real war. Christendom versus Islam. Christianity and the civilizations that have sprouted up in Christianity and all of the sects and deviations that have sprung up around it. Christianity, the Judeo-Christian ethic, and the civilizations that are produced versus barbarism and the civilizations that it has produced. And until we admit we are at war with Islam, we are not ever going to win. And there's nobody left who is willing to say it. We started out with a president. We started out 16 years ago with a president in office who wanted to take us out and fight the terrorists, to fight the Muslim terrorists. Now we have a president in office who is a Muslim. Or who supplicates himself, who bends down the knee and grovels at the feet of Islam so much that he might as well be one. He worships at the altar of Islam, at the altar of humanism, at the altar of Marx, at the altar of racism. He despises this country and everything that founded it and that it stands for, and he is laboring to unravel everything that our forefathers accomplished. He has no forefathers in his country. He is a Kenyan. So let's stop saying that for him. And who we are. When Bush left office, they were voting in Iraq. When Obama leaves office, now that Obama is on his last year, ISIS is running amok through Iraq. When Bush was in office, we were throwing terrorists in Guantanamo Bay, or leaving them as stains on the sand. Now it's the terrorists who are leaving charred corpses and beheaded bodies all over the Middle East. And other radical and other Islamists in this country kill, and scattered throughout other, raping and killing and driving civilization into retreat. When Bush was in his office, when Bush was in office, we didn't have riots in the street. What have we got now? Black Lives Matter, race riots in almost every city. We had our wake up call and we ignored it, and now this is where we're going. And unless God intervenes and gets a man in charge, unless God intervenes and puts a man in charge of the country, puts leaders in charge of this country who fear him more than who fear him and who do not fear the progressives or the Islamics, we are not going to change course until it is too late. Okay, it is 9:27. I don't know if I'll be doing a broadcast tomorrow. If I do, I'll post it on Twitter. Kind of a downer note to end things on, but I got stress and I'm not feeling too particularly perky. So, you all take care of yourselves, you hear? There are hard times coming, and it's going to get a lot darker before the sun, before it gets brighter again. We've got too many people dedicated to living in a fairy tale. So, but prepare, get ready. If it, if you don't know Jesus Christ, get to know him. Make your peace with God. Prepare for the storms that are coming. An ant prepares for the winter, and it's going to be a long winter. Even if we get good men in office all throughout the scale, and there is so much damage that has been done to our society that it is going to be a brutal, long, hard fight filled with blood, sweat, and tears to repair the damage that has been done to this country over the past century, and especially over the past 10, 20 years. Those of us who have accepted Christ as Savior know that there is nothing to fear in the long run. That someday that we are going to go, that either Christ is going to return or that we are going to go to be with Him. But we still have to live, and we still have to live one world at a time. And right now we're in this one. And we'd better prepare accordingly, not just sit up on our rooftop hoping Jesus will sweep us up in a fiery chariot before the waters rise too high. Take care of yourselves. Pray for each other. Look out for your neighbors. Look out for your friends and families and fellow believers. Keep your head down and your powder dry. Thank you all for tuning in. If you get a chance, toss a tip in the jar and say a prayer for me every chance you get, because God knows I need them. Y'all take care. Good night.